Hello, I am Dr. Richard Johnson, and I welcome you to our third installment in our episodes all around the power of virtue. And today we're going to be talking about virtue, character, and leadership. Probably things you didn't think about before. But virtue has, as you'll see, a great impact on these two things, character and leadership. So first of all, what is character? Well, character can be defined in a lot of different ways, but basically it's the moral qualities in a person, their individual, what are sometimes referred to as personal attributes, and that leads, of course, to their overall behaviors. A person with good character is all of this. So maybe specifically or succinctly stated, I could say, I'm reading here, sorry, character is the collective efforts of the mental and moral qualities that are distinctive about this individual. We all have character, but the character, what kind of character are we looking for, and what kind of character is held in highest esteem in our culture? Character is about what kind of person you are. John Adams, who was our second president, said back in 1801, said something very interesting about character. He said, "Liberty can no more exist without virtue than the body can live without a soul." It's pretty insightful for someone like that. So in looking at this thing called character, I looked into the corporate world because character is a very big issue in the corporate world. And so in corporate language, and I'm quoting here from a man by the name of Josephson, who runs the Josephson Institute on Character. And he says that the term character describes a person's most prominent attributes. It is the sum total of the features and traits that form an individual's nature. Well, that's pretty interesting here. So let me ask you this question. Are you more egocentric, that is, believing that your world is about you, or are you more other-centric, believing that the world, according to you, is really about us? That means all of us. A person with character, good moral character, would be the latter. He would think, or she would think, that the world is really about all of us. So people of good character are guided by ethical principles. They, quote, do the right thing for everyone, even when it's very hard for them to pay. In other words, it could extract something from them. They would have to not pay money, but it would have something that would be deep down in them that they would have to offer here. So this Mr. Josephson, who runs this consulting, talks about the 6 pillars of character. Now listen to these with regard to virtue. Here's this corporate consultant saying, here's what character is: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, compassion, and what he calls citizenship, which is really a sense of solidarity, that we're all in this together. So what is the same thing about all these 6 pillars? They're all, you guessed it, virtues. So we can see then that virtue is the identifying pivotal point of good character here. Now let's switch over to this concept called leadership. John Marshall, who was seen as kind of the definer of the Supreme Court way back in the early part of the 19th century, said this about leadership: a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Well, I don't know if I like that definition, actually. I think I see what he's trying to say, but you could say Adolf Hitler fulfilled these qualifications as far as John Marshall was concerned. I'm not putting the man down. I'm sure I took it out of context. Another author that I looked at listed 15 qualities of leadership, and 9 out of the 15 were virtues. Listen: honesty, confidence or perseverance, inspiration, commitment, empathy, resilience, humility, transparency, and vision. They're all virtues. So we saw virtue being very important for character development. Now we're talking about leadership, and we're finding the same thing. It's virtue. I'd like to shift gears just for a second and look at another kind of leadership. That's what we call servant leadership. So servant leader is a unique approach to leadership. These people achieve higher levels of group solidarity and work with a deeper consciousness of purpose in their life, in their work. And they not only look at what their leadership from psychological terms, but also from spiritual terms as well. So servant leaders strive for the common good rather than profits, power, possessions, or prestige as the highest goal for any organization. It's the common good. How is what we're doing here in this organization benefiting all of us, not just some of us, not just the shareholders, not just the people who work for us? Not that they're unimportant, they're obviously very important, but is the work of the organization, whether it's an enterprise, a corporation, a profit organization, or a nonprofit organization. Servant leaders are not commanders or controllers or bosses or even CEOs, even if they carry such titles. Rather, servant leaders are better defined as servers, supporters, partners, providers. It's a very different way of looking at this. There's no sense of dominance here. There's no sense of power over people. It is power with people. I gave a seminar on servant leadership some years ago, and I asked the participants, it was a 3-day seminar, and I asked the participants, well, after going through the seminar, well, what do you think are the characteristics of a servant leader? They gave me 12. Now, as I'm going through this list, in your mind, thinking about which of these 12 are virtues? Responsible. 2 is wise. 3 is inspirational. 4 is a helper. 5 is awareness. 6 is prudent. 7 is respectful. 8 is a good steward. 9 is a challenger. Next one is, I think is 10 is strong. 11 is open, and 12 is a facilitator. Each of these 12 is actually talking about a specific virtue or is pointing to an amalgam of virtues out there. So virtue is the central theme throughout all the writings I have ever reviewed and read on leadership. Finally, I'd like to talk about civic virtue. Civic virtue is defined as the habits important for success of a community, a state, a nation, or world. For example, the civic virtue of humility is not self-depreciation. Rather, humility from a civic perspective means it's not only about me, it's about you too, and it's about us. In other words, the community, the larger amalgam of all the people here together. Civic virtue was talked about way back in ancient Greece, 500 BC. Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, they all talked about virtue. In Plato's Republic, the book he wrote called The Republic is shot through with it as well. We can think of civic virtue as the power that activates character. You see how these all fit together? And virtue is the how can I say, the weaving underneath that supports all of what we're talking about here. As a light bulb requires power to light it up and become useful, character traits also require the power of virtue to light them up and make them operative. You can see this in the lives of people like Martin Luther King. Even one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, electrified people with his civic virtues, especially when he wrote his autobiography. And he identified 12 core virtues that he says that if a democracy ever loses these 12 core virtues, loses its grip on these, then the nation will fall into grave danger. Listen to these 12 that Benjamin Franklin was talking about. Temperance, silence, order, resolution, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. Now, we could go into each one of these, and they have broad definitions, but we won't. I think I've said enough about leadership, character, and civic leadership, servant leadership as well. And the point here is that all of these things that we admire and need in our culture and need in ourselves, all relies on virtue. It's great. Thanks so much. I'll look forward to seeing you next time when we're going to be talking about your personality.